Welcome to Enjoy Exceptional Living. I am Lynn Fritz, your program producer and host. This program is in collaboration with Enjoy Magazine, KLXR 1230 AM radio, and myself, a private practice licensed marriage and family therapist. In each of our programs, our intention is to bring you programs about interesting people, places, and projects of Northern California that we think you will enjoy and that we think are exceptional. We have a very intriguing and most interesting program for you, a very unique program for our listeners today. In many of our communities in Northern California and throughout the United States, and specifically the West Coast, we often see people from the region of Southeast Asia, people from Vietnam, from Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, Myanmar, Laotian, Thai people. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us as a community to be able to hear about a program that is bridging the cultural gaps, and that is allowing individuals that have come to our region as refugees from the Vietnam War and the war that impacted all of that region to be able to get to know their own culture in a better way. I have here in our program, our first segment, 4 individuals that have been immersed in this program, a most extraordinary program. Jessica Roan is the Director of International Programs with the McConnell Foundation, and she has been the one working with this program, and she will explain to us, I think the word might be partnerships, that help create this program. We also have T. Sarah Se Chow, who participated in the program. We have Faye Sapon, who participated in the program, and we have a mentor with us today, Pan Jan Si Nan Tao Hu, who served as a mentor. So I'm going to actually ask each one to say their names because it's wonderful having the actual appropriate sound to the description and the explanation of their names. So I'm going to ask you, Jessica, as the Director of International Programs with the McConnell Foundation. Welcome to the program, all of you.
Thank you.
But I'm going to ask you to describe what this program is that we're highlighting today and how it came into being.
Sure. So this program is a McConnell Foundation sponsorship that allows local residents to participate in the Study Abroad in Laos program, which is organized by the Center for Laos Studies based out of San Francisco. So their Study Abroad program has been ongoing for several years now, and this is the first year that the McConnell Foundation has offered some fellowships for local participants. And this is a 5-week immersive study program based in Vientiane, the capital city of Laos, and hosted by the Lao American College.
Sounds fascinating. So your role in working with this would be what?
So my role as the director of our international programs is to really seek out these opportunities. I work with the McConnell Foundation on our programs in Laos and in Nepal as well. In Laos, we've been working there since 2006, and most of our programming there has been focused on access to justice work, as well as some natural resource issues. And being involved in the community here in Shasta County, I was often asked, how I'm really interested in Laos. How can I get involved with the work that you're doing there? And there wasn't a mechanism for local community members to be involved with our work in Laos. So we started investigating ways that we could bridge those opportunities. The McConnell Foundation has so many relationships with amazing people and organizations in Laos, and it seemed that there would be a lot of benefit both for citizens in Laos as well as our own local community if we could extend that somehow. And this Study Abroad program has been a very interesting way to offer some of those connections between cities, between Vientiane, Laos, and our communities here in Redding.
So when you say an immersion experience, a 5-week period, when you perhaps one of our listeners doesn't know what that means, can you describe that? What's the intention of an immersion experience?
I'll do my best. So in this program, you don't want to think so much as vacation experience, more as we are going to sit deeply in day-to-day life in this country, culture, society. We're going to get to know these people, not just the historical line, but how do they make breakfast? What do we talk about over lunch while we're in Laos? How do we cross the street in Vientiane? So all of those little details that make up someone's life experience results in really feeling immersed in society and in how one would build relationships with people in another country.
I think that's a very good description. And I guess if I was to say it in a phrase, I would say something like, it's really about, instead of the vacation experience, you're living day to day. You're getting a sense of what life is like there.
Right, which also contrasts to what would be strictly a classroom experience or just a textbook sort of experience of understanding another culture. It's different to live it.
Definitely different to live it. So our listeners may be hearing this beautiful sound, and I want to have actually one of our guests, Faye Se Pon, tell us, what is that beautiful sound we're hearing? What is that?
This is an Mian jewelry, and it's all real silver, and they usually like to accessorize with a lot of silver. It's kind of just like their way of just showing
Beauty.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's unique to use from that culture to use the silver. I mean,
Yes.
it's the traditional material,
Yes,
correct?
yes, and it's from Laos, and my mom got it from cousins and families who send it over. Yeah,
Because you are
because I'm Mian.
Mien,
Yes.
and your mom grew up
Is-
where?
In Laos,
In Laos.
Yes.
And she came here to Reading.
yes, in around 1995. Yeah.
Wonderful. That's so beautiful. I wish our listeners could see it, but you can certainly hear it from time to time when she moves. It is just an extraordinary neck piece, and I don't know how to describe it. It's just stunningly beautiful. So I'm so grateful that you wore that and are sharing that. So I'm going to ask you more questions, and we're going to hear more from you. But I also want to take a moment and talk with Pan Jan Se Nun Ta Hugh.
It's actually Ban Jan Sinanta Hugh, but I go by Pam.
Yeah. Thank you. And your cultural background.
I was actually born in Laos, so I am Laotian, yes. And I came to the U.S. in 1980 when I was 8 years old.
8 years old. Wonderful. So what inspired you to get involved with the program?
I think there's just so much to answer for that one
Yeah.
simple question. But the simple answer would be my children and the children of all the people who came to the U.S. and to Reading who don't know where their parents came from and don't know their history.
Yeah, yeah. And so it took your time to go and be part of the program as a mentor. So as a mentor, what was your role?
Gosh, that's another tough question because, like Jessica said, we walked across the street together, looked for food together, walked to class together. We pretty much were together through every experience. And as a mentor, my role was to be there to support them, to help them, to answer questions, to facilitate events or anything that came up.
So you were actually in the immersion experience with them.
Yes, I was. Every aspect.
And you know, you're talking about trying to get across the street. And so, you know, our listeners are going, well, why is getting across the street so difficult? So I'm going to ask Tisera Se Chow. Did I say that correctly?
It's actually Tessera
Tessera.
Kilcumdi Say Chow, yes.
That's a beautiful
Thank
name.
you so much.
And what are you pointing to when you say you had to learn to get across the street?
Ooh, well, let's just say the street was so hard to get across to. It's definitely not like America at all. You have people just on mopeds or even on motorcycles with their families and their kids sitting on the seats with the parents as well, just going, on with their lives, going across the street. And even with the stoplight, it could be red. And, just with us crossing the street, making sure it's a safe place to cross. It's really tough, and it's a little bit scary. I feel kind of like a dangerous person just crossing the street.
It's very congested.
Yes.
And it moves very fast.
Yes.
Do they stop for pedestrians?
No, not at all. It's completely different how it is here in America.
Yes.
Like if you see a pedestrian crossing the street, the pedestrians have the right of way, of course. But, over there in a different country, it's just they don't stop for you at all. So, if you see a truck going, they will not stop. You just have to run across the street and just make sure everyone else is in front of you. Or if they're behind you, make sure they get there as fast as they can.
That's amazing. Definitely an unusual skill set, but
Yeah.
I think that's important to recognize that we kind of take for granted that, crossing the street, well, that's not a big deal, but it's different in different cultures.
Exactly.
So it requires you to immerse yourself in their way. They're not going to stop doing their way for you. You have to join what they're
Right.
doing. So what's your ethnic background?
My ethnic background consists of 4 different types of languages. So there is Lao, Thai, Mian, and Chinese. Yeah, I definitely identify myself as an Asian American. So it consists of so many different backgrounds. So just, explaining about where I come from, it's really great for other people to hear because, I'm not just like of one background. I'm of 4 different kinds.
So your dad, what was his cultural background?
So my dad's cultural background consists of Chinese and Mian, and as for my mother, it consists of Lao and Thai.
Wow.
Yes.
That's wonderful. So you're a country in yourself. I mean,
Pretty much,
multi.
basically, yes.
That's wonderful. So I want to ask you, each of you, to think about when you decided here's this opportunity to be part of this fellowship, this experience. What drew you? I mean, did you have any hesitancy to sign up and apply for it, or how did it work for you?
Well, hearing about this program, I heard about it from my mother who actually, told me about this. And as I began looking more research into it, it was just like, wow, it's going to be such an amazing experience. I need to get on top of this right away because, I want to learn so much about my background, and especially coming from a family where I'm not fully exposed to my own culture. I'm, more exposed to the American culture.
Yeah.
So just getting this chance, this once in a lifetime opportunity to learn more about where my background is and where my family grew up, where they come from, like how did they go from that culture to adapting to, this whole new different lifestyle in America. It's definitely an eye-opener experience, and I am so glad to apply it and to learn so much within these past 5 weeks about not only myself, but about my family as well. It's an amazing experience.
Were your parents, did they grow up here in the U.S. or were they born?
Well, actually, both of my
Overseas.
parents were born in Thailand. And so for my dad, he didn't come to America until he was 8 years old. He has a little bit of, knowledge of how he grew up, and working in the rice field, and not going to school every day, but trying to learn as much as he can. And so coming to America, it was completely different for him. And as for my mom, she was only about a month old, so she doesn't know anything. She doesn't remember anything about her own country. So
And did they come as refugees?
yes, they did.
They did.
Hmm.
Thank you for sharing. How about you, Faye? How has it been for you to apply?
I actually heard about this program from my community advisor. And when I first heard about it, I was kind of iffy about it because I was scared that I wasn't going to be able to get in. So I did feel like I was not good enough for it, so I wasn't planning on applying at first. But after my family and my friends started telling me, oh, you should really do it. It's such a good opportunity. You can learn about your cultural background and where your family came from. And and the language, I decided to just go for it, and so I did, and I was actually so happy when I got in. I was just ecstatic, and so I was just, yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, your parents, where did they grow up? Where were they born?
They were born in Laos,
In
and
Laos.
they came to the United States around 1995, and they were also refugees.
Refugees. And when we talk about refugees, this might be a good question for you to facilitate for us, Pam. Why would people from that region have to come as refugees? What do we mean by that term, refugee? What would it have meant if they stayed where they were?
Wow, you have such tough questions. A refugee is either an individual or a family having to flee their country, not voluntarily. They leave for security reasons or whatever personal reasons they may have. So I am considered a refugee. My family's a refugee. And like I said, all 9 of us came in 1980 after we were in a refugee camp for 4 years in Thailand.
Wow. We're here in conversation with individuals that have been participating in an extraordinary program that is in partnership with McConnell Foundation and the Center
Center for Lao Studies,
that's out of
San Francisco.
San Francisco. So we're bringing San Francisco influence. We're bringing Redding, Northern California influence. We're reaching across the ocean, bridging distance and joining cultures that have been separated through war, the adversity of war. I think what's important for many, especially younger people that aren't aware of why did they have to flee the region, is because the families that worked and served with U.S. soldiers were considered enemies of when the war was lost. And so those that had fought along with Americans through the war would be killed if they did not flee. And so the refugees that came here, they came here to survive. Otherwise, they would have been executed. And I think that's a picture that many of us in our community don't realize. And from my personal perspective, I've loved diversity of culture. I think there's great beauty in diversity because I think all the different cultures around the world, all of us together make a wholeness of who we are as humanity. I always say the organism of humanity. It's kind of the science version of it. So thinking about a 5-week program, wouldn't it have been different if it had been a 2-week program? Don't you think, Pam?
I think it would have been, you would have missed some things in a 2-week program. It's not long enough. Even just traveling is already a day there and a day back and then jet lag. So the 5-week I think was perfect because it gave you a chance to really, really get into it and live it and experience it. With 2 weeks, you're not recovered enough to really live the day to day and then having to just leave.
And I'm curious about where you visited. We talked about City Street. Did you go out into the rural areas? You talked about planting rice. So did all of you plant rice, and did you go out further in the rural areas, or were you mostly in metropolitan?
Actually, we had an amazing trip. We went from the capital of Thailand, from Bangkok, to Pak Se, which is another major city in Laos. And in Pak Se, we actually got to visit a home, the home of the director of the Center for Lao Studies, actually his family. They were gracious enough to host us for a day at their home and fed us what they would eat, and also to plant the rice in one of their fields that they left so we could experience what their lives are like on a day-to-day basis and what they ate and how hard they worked. It was just, we went from the capital of Vientiane with smog and traffic to the beautiful, they call it the Mekong River, but in Laos it's called Nam Kong, and the rice field was right there. You can see the river, and the fish we ate came out of that river for that meal. it was just amazing.
You know, I have a friend that's Mien, and I remember her telling me, I think she was 8, that her family swam across the Mekong. Even though they didn't swim, they floated across in order to escape. And so I think it's important to be able to revisit that river, to be able to go back to the country that's no longer in war, and to be able to form that connection, because I think it is powerful for us to do that. Coming back to you, Faye, I'm wondering, when you think of your participation in this program and the takeaway for you, what impacted you the most, do you think? I know it's a big question, isn't it? I'm going to ask you too also. To Sarah.
What impacted me the most? I would probably say learning about the culture and history of Laos, because my family went through all of that in the past, and I wasn't able to understand any of it until I learned it in class and was able to experience the society in Laos. So I think that's what impacted me the most, because it got me to be more connected with my family and to understand what happened in the past and why they're like this now.
So when you say you're connecting different with your family, can you share a little bit about how you are relating differently with your family since your trip?
Well, I'm able to understand where my parents came from. So they asked me about, oh, you planted rice in Paksay, and I'd say, yeah, that's something they used to do. And I'm able to understand the hard work they went through just to put food on the table and just to make sure that their kids are able to get food and
just survive.
To survive.
Yeah.
And just my grandparents were also, my grandpa was also in the war, and he was also, I was able to understand more about his past as well, but it's just everything, just the culture and just the language as well.
Yeah.
So
Because the culture really is the language, the foods, the way of life, the way people communicate without words,
yeah.
and everything, the climate.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that you can't get here.
Yeah.
So it's a very different, powerful experience. How about you, Tessera?
Well, what impacted me the most would have to be the learning experience overall. Just learning about who I am as a person, where my family came from, and where my background lies. It's just overall amazing. I'm able to speak, read, and write the language more than when I first came into the country of knowing. So, just learning so much within such little time, it's really great. And my parents and my family, they're all so supportive and so proud of how much I've learned. And I think it impacted them as well, just learning about the culture and just being able to communicate with them on the language, just hearing them speak back, and I'm able to understand. It's an amazing feeling, and I think they're so proud of me that going on this trip, I learned, and they're just so happy for me.
Well, I don't you think it connects you to them in a different, new way?
Yeah, it does actually. Like, I feel I'm even more connected with them because I'm learning so much about the culture. Like before going onto the trip in Laos, it's just I didn't have as much experience within my own culture than I do now. I wasn't able to speak with my parents or my grandparents, especially on the language. And as for my grandparents, they don't really know much English, so it was really hard for them to conversate with me in the English language, and for me to try and speak aloud to them before I went on this trip, like I didn't know as much as I do now. So just knowing the amount of knowledge that of the Lao language and the Lao culture now than I did then. It's just, they're so relieved to have known that I can speak so much and well than what I did before.
In our Western culture, our emphasis oftentimes is on acquiring things and about wearing name, label, brands of clothing and types of things.
Right.
Was that true in Laos?
In Laos, pretty much. I've seen people, they wear Nikes, they wear Adidas, they even wear, accessory bags such as like Coach or Michael Kors or something, and just seeing how the American culture, they've experienced that, just like
Influence them,
or
hasn't it?
influence that. Right, that's the word I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Just seeing that being influenced over there in a different country, it's an eye-opener for me, because going to the country, I honestly did not expect to see any American influence whatsoever, especially going to the Lao American College, where we would go for our classes and whatnot. Just seeing the kids wear American labels on their clothes, it's just like, wow, I did not expect this at all.
I would like to ask you two ladies your age for our listeners so they know the spectrum.
Okay, I am 19 years old.
19 years old,
Yeah.
and you're going off to college. What's your next step?
I am actually enrolled in the California State University of Sacramento. I will be entering my second year.
Yay.
Yeah, and I'm also majoring in psychology. But, just after the whole Laos trip, it really got me thinking. After I finish my studies, I hope on moving my stuff there and just planning to live there for, the rest of my life. Hopefully, build a foundation for kids who don't know much about their background, or, who even also want to learn the English language. I want to be able to do something about it and help them as well.
I want to thank you, and I want to ask Faye your age and where are you at?
I'm 20 years old, and I am currently attending Shasta College, and I'm majoring in electrical engineering.
Wonderful. So I thank you for coming. In our next segment, we're going to have a couple more that were participants in the program. So I'm going to invite you to come right back to enjoy exceptional living. Welcome back to Enjoy Exceptional Living. I am Lynn Fritz, your program producer and host. This program is in collaboration with Enjoy Magazine, KLXR 1230 AM radio, and myself, a private practice licensed marriage and family therapist. The intention of our program is to bring to our communities the best of people, places, and projects of Northern California that we think are exceptional and that we think you're going to enjoy. We have very special guests here in the studio with us today. In our first segment, you met two individuals that participated in a very extraordinary program that's a partnership between the Center for Lao Studies and the McConnell Foundation. In our second segment, you're going to meet two more individuals that participated in this immersion experience, but I'm going to reintroduce those that are here. We have with us today Jessica Rohn, who is the director of the international program for the McConnell Foundation. We also have Melinda Chow, Jasmine Say Chow, and we have Pam, let's see if I can get this right, Sinan Tahu. So beautiful, beautiful names. So I'm going to ask Jessica to explain what this program's about, and I think it'd be good for our listeners to know what your role is in working with the McConnell Foundation.
Sure, Lynn. Thanks for having us. So I am the Director of International Programs with the McConnell Foundation, and we do some international grants in Nepal and Laos. About 90% of what we do is based here in the North State, but we do a little bit of international funding, and I have the great privilege of getting to oversee that work. We've been working in Laos since 2006, and that work has primarily been in access to justice and natural resource issues. So there really wasn't a way to engage our local community here in our projects in Laos, but we get that request a lot. We do have a significant population of refugees from the secret war in Laos who are here in Northern California. And it seemed like a missed opportunity to not engage that population and our wider Shasta County area with a lot of the programming that's done in Laos through the McConnell Foundation. So our goal was really to find a way to reach out to local participants here in Shasta and extend a lot of those relationships with the great people and organizations that we work with in Laos.
When I think of the McConnell Foundation, I recognize that, they have benefited, Siskiyou, Shasta, their Yosemite Institute program benefits students, Trinity, Lassen, I think even some of the Modoc County as well as Shasta and Siskiyou. But I think the flagship, you might say, of their work is the Sundial Bridge. And that gift to the community, I am there at least on a weekly basis because of its great beauty and the symbol that it is to the community of bringing community together and providing us a place where we can connect with the beauty of the river, the beauty of the outdoors.
Thank you. Yes, I take
Yeah.
my daughter there almost every week as well.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. And so one of the things I wanted to ask about, too, as far as the international programs are concerned, do you think this will be ongoing in the future, or is that yet to be reviewed and determined?
The short answer is it's yet to be determined.
Yeah.
The more complete answer to that is that this was a fabulous pilot year in
Yes.
that it was well received and we identified where it can be improved. So it has, I'm feeling really optimistic
Yeah.
that this is going to continue to be something that's extremely valuable, both for our friends in Laos and for people of Lao and Laotian heritage here, as well as the general population. There's so much for this connection to benefit our region.
And there's nothing like an immersion experience, no matter how many books you read or how many DVDs or movies you watch, you can't get it unless you are in the space physically and experiencing the culture directly.
That's really absolutely true. And with this group of pilot participants, most of them were first-time travelers. Many had actually not been on a plane at all. So in orientation and in trying to prepare this novice group, but eager group of travelers, it's incredibly difficult to tell someone what to expect when you haven't had any glimpse of that yet.
Yeah.
And so with all of the prep, there's this first day in Laos where people are saying, oh my gosh, this is what it looks like. And there's, quite an adjustment period, but that's the beauty is in the challenges of that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it would be helpful too if you explain the process, these participants, how you selected them and what they had to do in order to be selected.
Absolutely. So this fellowship is open to any resident of Shasta County who is, at least this is how we did it this pilot year, always room for tweaking, between the ages of 16 and 22. We did say that there was some preferential process for heritage students in the application process, but anyone who really had a passion about Laos was encouraged to apply. It would be great to extend this, to a wide group of Shasta County residents. This year we did get a complete group of people of different Laotian heritage, and they also all ended up being female, which was not part of the prerequisite either. Especially funny since they're all called fellows. But
And I do know that you had shared previously that some men also applied.
we
boys.
did get a few, but not enough. So we do have to really work on our outreach to male applicants next year, supposing there is a next year. The application process is that there was an online application as well as brochures handed out at the schools around the community, a lot of online social media promotion. There was a deadline with the applications submitted. Those applications were reviewed by a panel of 7 diverse people online. And then the top 10 were selected for an interview with a panel of 4. And out of that, we were able to select 6 youth participants.
That's extraordinary. How about the selection of the mentors?
Selection of the mentors was very hand-picked this first year because it is a pilot program. We were really looking for a specific person, and they needed to be, have a certain kind of experience with Laos and a certain kind of passion for this program. So these were people who had really stepped up to help us design and put together this first year.
And just sharing from my own cultural experience, I'm Native American and Swedish, and I know that despite reading textbooks, which there's very limited and actually inaccurate information about Native American culture, annually I visit new areas where other Native Americans other than my own local community have been and are, and there's nothing like the immersion experience where you see how they lived, how they live currently, their history, the legacy. So you just can't get it from a textbook.
You're absolutely right. You can't get it from a textbook. You don't smell it. You don't feel the humidity. You don't know what it takes to walk to the market to get that food or where it came from. So you can't embody the experience until you do.
Yeah. I really want to commend the Center for Laotian Studies and the McConnell Foundation for their work. And personally, I feel that it's especially the first year, selecting candidates that have that cultural connection. They come from that region. Their roots come from that region, because when you can have the immersion experience and connect with your roots, you do relate differently to your family, to future generations.
That's an extremely valuable and deep aspect of this program. We've seen some incredible results of that even just in discussing the possibility of this program, the conversations that start happening in families, revealing parts of their own histories that haven't been discussed for decades. It's very cathartic.
And I think when we get to Pam and ask her as being one of the mentors that participated, one of the 3 mentors that participated, looking at impact upon her, I think it's important to highlight too, when the group came back, what was the follow-up for them? They gave you feedback, but what else did they do?
Well, seeing that they've returned less than 2 weeks ago, they're still unpacking bags and, distributing gifts to family members, I think. So I think we're going to continue to see a lot of that. But they put together a fabulous video that's easy to share about their experience, and then gave some of us a really powerful presentation about their personal experiences. And they also have plans to make further presentations throughout the community. I'm not going to name names yet because nothing is on the calendar and I don't want to make false promises.
Right.
But we do hope to see them at cultural events and doing more outreach to potential participants in the future.
And is there a way that a listener can view the video? Is it online?
It is
posted?
listed on the McConnell Foundation Facebook site. So if you friend us on Facebook, you'll see that post that has a link to their YouTube video. It's extremely comical, if I may say.
And who produced it?
Well, the 6 youth participants did, with a special acknowledgement to Melinda Chow here, who did a lot of the technical side.
Yes, that's wonderful. And I think having the visuals, and I appreciate the humor too. To me, it had a spontaneity and joy to it that was captured, and gratitude. I mean, you could see that they enjoyed the process and were expressing their gratitude, appreciation for being able to participate. That's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
Yeah. Okay, I want to start with Melinda Chow. And you are wearing a beautiful necklace and a beautiful sash. Can you tell us about the necklace and the sash? Where did those come from?
These are Mien pieces. The sash was stitched by my grandparents, and these are the traditional stitching methods
Wow.
that they used. And the necklace is pure silver. It's pretty heavy, about 5 pounds.
It's beautiful. Both are beautiful.
Thank you.
The stitching is extraordinary. Especially this very intricate. I mean, it's amazing. White, purple, green, blue, red. I mean, it's extraordinary. I'm hoping that on the video, there seems like were the sashes shown in the video?
No, not the Mien sashes.
So your cultural heritage,
Yes, I am Mien.
Mien, and your parents?
My parents were born in Laos, and they immigrated to the United States.
And when you were visiting, did you get to see their community that they lived, or were you near it at all?
No, they were born in the northern part of Laos.
But you got pretty close.
Yeah, we got pretty close to the villages.
Yes. So I'm going to ask now that Jasmine, how about that beautiful necklace you have on and that beautiful sash?
The necklace is also silver and it's also very heavy. There's attachments like how Faye was wearing that make noise when you move and when you walk. The sash, my grandmother also hand stitched, so it's all hand stitched, and you can tell if you turn it over if the stitching looks exactly the same, that it was hand stitched and it's proper.
Wow, that's extraordinary. And it must make them very proud to have you guys wearing the sash.
Yes,
'Cause
very
it
much.
not only represents your culture, but it represents your family.
Yes, of course. It's
Yeah.
usually handed down. The sashes and the necklace aren't usually the only part of the traditional clothing for Mien culture. It's usually about a suitcase full of accessories and the outfit. So these two aspects are only a part of it, but there's a lot more that comes to it.
So can you mention just a couple of those things that would be part of that traditional garb?
Usually a robe with a red around the neck, as well as a headpiece that is heavy, and it gets very warm if you have to wear it, and if you have to traditionally dance in it, it's
Very
very
warm.
complicated and it makes timing another difficulty.
So your community was from where?
My mom was born in Lao, Thailand area. It's kind of undocumented, so she doesn't know exactly.
And they were refugees.
Yes.
Yes.
She
Yes.
came to the U.S. when she was about 1 year old. Her parents brought her.
And that way they could survive.
Yes.
And you are here with us today.
Yes.
So thinking about, in our first segment, I asked the participants to think about, what they came away with, what impacted them the most about visiting and having this immersion experience. What stands out to you as, maybe it's not the thing, but it's one of the things that stands out to the experience that you had?
One thing that stood out to me was just to step into it and experience everything of the area. Just because most of our families from the participants weren't Laotian doesn't necessarily mean that the cultures weren't the same. A saying that we always use while we were in Southeast Asia was same but different. How all the cultures between Thailand and Laos and Cambodia, they're all very similar, but they all have their differences as well. So just to experience something very similar to it, it's amazing. It's an
Yeah.
amazing experience.
Yeah. How old are you?
I am 16 years old.
16 years
Yes.
old. Good for you for going through the application process and being able to participate. What inspired you to apply?
When my aunt, who was also a mentor as well as Pam, she encouraged me to apply, and I declined at first. I wasn't interested. I didn't want to give up my summer. I just thought it was too big of an obligation to be tied down for that long. And then something changed around Christmas time. I think my family's influence kept telling me it's such a great opportunity. You should just look into it more. And I did, and then I got heavily invested in it. I wanted to go so bad. I was obsessed with the idea. So I'm glad that the applications were after Christmas.
Excellent. How about for you, Melinda? First, your age,
I'm 19.
and what encouraged you, inspired you to apply?
I've always wanted to go back to Laos or Thailand to see where my family was from. So being able to do this, when I saw the opportunity come up, I applied right away because I wanted to experience that.
Wonderful. What impacted you the most?
I think what impacted me the most was being able to connect everything, like between all the little stories that my mom or my grandparents would tell me about how they were raised or how they migrated to America, being able to connect and actually see everything that they went through. Now I'm able to understand the hardships that they went through coming to America and learning a new culture. When I went over there, it was very difficult for me to be able to communicate in Laos and even to be able to purchase a meal. So I can understand how difficult it was for them to come to America
Yeah.
and be able to buy all like the basic everyday things they needed.
And the way of life was big difference. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. I'm going to ask you, too, to think about coming back and sharing your experience with groups. What do you think about doing that? Is that something challenging for you, or do you think it's a good thing to do?
I think it's a great thing to do. The challenging part is getting people to understand, because since they weren't there to experience it with us, they're going to have that same difficulty that we had before going on this trip when we hear a parent's story, being able to connect it. But now, since we are able to connect those experiences, it's going to be difficult trying to get that across to other people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I do think that the video communicates in a different way. I think your clothing that you have and the necklace and jewelry that you have helps with that, because it's stunningly beautiful. The embroidery work of the sash is just amazing. I mean, my family, my Swedish side of the family, did lots of embroidery work, and it was highly prized and valued. So, it's just a huge, extraordinary way of expressing through art, culturally. So good for you. And for you, Jasmine, coming back and sharing your experience, what has been the challenges and around that?
I think that with our age group, with the fact that we're so young, it's so rich to be able to share this. There are challenges because we are so young as well. Most of the people, our friends, haven't had the opportunity to travel as far outside the country to experience the richness that we got to as well. So there is a challenge to where, as Melinda mentioned, there's that barrier where we experienced it, but they didn't. So there's that barrier where we can't explain things completely, because it's something different between living in a new place and living in a new country where you can't explain it unless someone goes with you or they've been there, and you can just share these things that you completely forget about to mention to new people.
In my profession, there's a high regard for what's called the lived experience. And you've had some of that lived experience by your immersion experience that makes you an authority, gives you, a physical experience that, it's physical, psychological, emotional, spiritual. It's all those things. And I'm going to ask Pam, when you were serving as a mentor in this program, and, we talked about what impacts people, and when you've had discussions with the group, the other mentors, what's important for us to know?
What's important for us to know, or for us to get across?
Or for us as the listener, that you want to communicate to us?
I think what I would like to get across myself personally
Yes.
is that to live in someone's shoes, to walk in someone's feet, to eat what they eat, to experience their life, that's how you know what someone's going through or what life is like. And before you can look at someone and pass judgments or have questions, just looking at them and making judgments, I think that for us, that, you know, if when you're there and you're doing it, then you know and you realize you have sympathy, you have understanding, you have compassion, and to be able to bring that back, that understanding, that connection with our families and our community is what I think this experience means the most to me personally too, because I took both my daughters with me. That's how much I wanted them to understand where I came from, where their grandparents came from, and why we're here in this country. And what I hope for them and for the participants too is to carry that on, to spread that understanding and that connection, and be able to just spread that seed of curiosity, that inquiry, that need to explain or to communicate understanding of what it means to understand another culture, especially one where that's your ancestry, that's where you came from. I
Your
think
roots.
understanding lives to peace with humanity,
Mhm.
peace within community, and it fills your soul.
Powerful, powerful. When you think of having to flee a country, your home country, never really able to return because of the issues that are going on, especially a war zone, and be transplanted, picked up, and put someplace completely different from your own way of life. And to me, I would call that as a therapist a trauma experience, a war experience. Maybe you and your family didn't directly experience a war, but you're the generation that is following that you have that in your very legacy. And so I think it builds our community when we can begin to understand and connect the words you use to our roots. And it changes us. And because you're here in this community, not only Northern California, but as you go off to universities and other places throughout the United States, it changes those communities. I'm wondering from your experience, Pam, because you're not from Western civilization, you're transplanted here. Did you feel like a transplant?
I did, and I still do, but I've made the U.S. my home, Redding's my home, Shasta's my home, but when I went to Laos, that was my home.
Yeah.
You know, I'm getting teared just saying that because you make of your life what you want it to be. This trip, one of the things I said to the girls was, you take it for what you want it to be and make it your own. Take what you will from what you've learned, from what you see. Take responsibility for everything that's happening here to yourself and just in general, because that's, if you can do that and you can pass that on, you will enrich whoever you touch and wherever you go.
And I think having that vision to be able to be impacting our communities, individuals in our communities, by our experiences and broadening that understanding, broadening that connection. So yes, we're bridging from Shasta County over into Laos, but it's a much bigger bridge, isn't it?
I think so, Lynn, because these young ladies will be building that bridge, and they will be building on this experience in their lives, and they're never going to forget it. And I think they will continue to experience it every time they talk about it, every time they reach someone, every time that someone asks them a question about their life. I think it's something that just will keep rippling and keep going. And I can't thank enough, the McConnell Foundation and the Center for Laos Studies for giving us all this opportunity. It's like a dream, and thank you.
So I do want to leave our listeners with a way. Jessica mentioned Facebook. They could see the video that the group created. So they would look under McConnell Foundation to see that. I would encourage our listeners, too, to look up the Center for Laos Studies out of San Francisco. And I love the consciousness and the vision to create partnerships, because I think it does make each individual that's had this experience, the mentors and the participants and all the people that participated in the process, to have a connection with each other and across our world, and it enhances our community. Don't you agree?
I certainly do, because from this, we have met so many amazing, inspiring individuals who we're still in contact with, who we will be in contact with. And I'm just going to mention one if I can, if we have time. He's a Mian author. His name's Savan Sepan. And I'm hoping that, we will be working with him. I'm already committed to sponsor some of his students, because we went to visit his facility in his school and got to know him. And this is just one individual. We met so many inspiring people. We visited the Cope Center, which has which deals with the UXO and the bombing of Laos, because if you're not aware, Laos is the most bombed country in the history.
We need to have you back. Unfortunately, we're out of time. So I want to thank our listeners. I want to thank you all that came in for the program, and keep up your good work. It's an ongoing process of understanding and connection, isn't it? I want to thank our listeners and remind you that make this day and every day a day to enjoy exceptional living. Thank you.